us now.
All right, your mics are on, so be careful what you say about me.
I have to remember to look down there.
Sorry, if I had this room to wire again, it would be different.
Can we,
All right, it is 6 p.m. Let's get started. Welcome everyone to the Lincolnville Select Board meeting. It is August 26th. We are just wrapped up an executive session with our town attorney, and having finished that, in perfect timing to get started with our public session. So before we get going, Robin, would you care to read the quote of the evening?
Sure. There are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. Vladimir Lenin.
Thank you very much. And I would like to open the podium for any non-agenda items. And I'm not seeing anyone here that isn't associated with an agenda item, so we will move along to the administrator's report.
I would like to make sure I thanked the volunteers that assisted us with the election that we conducted on Thursday of last week. Without their assistance, we couldn't have done the work. And also a couple people in the town office, specifically Karen for doing most of the work behind the scenes, and for Cheryl, who actually pulled 2 days by herself here in the town office. Well, not completely by herself, but by herself at the front counter in the town office while Matt and everybody else was subbing in the background. Was a wee bit challenging, but obviously we're on to this week and everything went through fine. Bigger projects, probably the biggest is Calderwood Lane. Calderwood Lane now has a base pavement layer down, and if weather and contractors cooperate, they'll put the surface on tomorrow. And then it'll be cleanup work with driveways and shoulder work and that type of thing. But the bulk of that work is complete. Outside of that, I guess I'd field any questions. We're working on the list, so to speak.
Anything for David on the administrator's report? Okay,
No.
Seeing nothing, let's move along to upcoming meetings and announcements.
All meetings are here in the town office unless announced otherwise. Lakes and Ponds Committee meets Tuesday, August 27th, 7 p.m. Planning Board meets Wednesday, August 28th, 6 p.m. Please note the new start time for the Planning Board is now 6 p.m. versus 7. That's going to be 6 p.m. moving forward. Midcoast Solid Waste Corporation Board of Directors meets Wednesday, August 28th, 6:30 at the Camden Town Office. The town office will be closed in observance of Labor Day on Monday, September 2nd. Heart and Soul will have their community meeting on public services on Thursday, September 5th, 6 p.m. at the Lincolnville Central School. The Heart and Soul Committee wanted me to make sure that I emphasize that to the Select Board. They might be interested in attending. Recreation Commission is scheduled to meet Monday, September 9th, 4 p.m. Land Use Committee scheduled to meet Monday, September 9th, 4 p.m. I'm looking at the Land Use Committee member and their consultant. They're both shaking their heads, so that's good. And the Select Board meets next on Monday, September 9th, 6 p.m.
Thank you very much. And are there any upcoming community events anyone wishes to share? I might note that as a reminder, everyone is encouraged to attend the Maine DOT public meeting on the proposed ferry terminal improvements. That is on the 29th at 6 p.m. at the Lincolnville Central School, and that is specific to the ferry terminal improvements. It is not regarding parking or any other DOT ongoing project in Lincolnville at this time. Any other community events? Seeing none, let's move along to the meeting minutes from the 12th of August.
I move the board approve the August 12th, 2024 meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there discussion?
Yeah.
Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Thank you very much. And moving rapidly along, we have Mr. Shapiro here in the audience who has completed a community interest form, and he was interested in many different areas of serving our town. I did have an occasion to have a conversation with him on the phone, and it sounded like the planning board really was top on the list, considering that both the land use committee and the harbor committee are full at this time. Does anyone have questions for Mr. Shapiro?
I do.
All right, Mr. Shapiro, would you care to please come to the podium? That way for posterity and our rapt audience watching at home and on YouTube can participate through your speaking into the microphone and being on camera. And if you would just grab that microphone's a little wonky right there, if you just pull it towards yourself. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Welcome. Yes, Robin.
Well, my question is, you circled, I'd like to serve as a regular member, but the planning board and comprehensive plan review committee both have alternate positions open. Would you be interested in being an alternate member on either of those boards as opposed to a regular member?
I think I would prefer a regular member.
Right, but if they don't have any, which they don't, would you?
Then I might move my priority to another committee.
Okay. The only one that has a regular position open is the Board of Appeals.
That would be my first
So that would
choice.
be your first
Okay.
choice?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
Excellent question. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Shapiro?
No.
Anything you want to say to the board?
Well, I think the board ought to ask me, in general, what is my feeling about design, especially as it applies to this beautiful community. I think that would be one of the most legitimate questions you could ask. And if someone did, then I would answer that my decisions on planning issues, broad scope planning issues, is one basically of being quite conservative. I have seen what fast growth can do. You can never pull it back. Here in Maine, the two examples that I would give would be Bangor versus Portland. My wife, who insists on being called wife emeritus because she doesn't like ex-wife, my wife grew up in Bangor, and two of my daughters live in Cape Elizabeth. And I lived in Camden for 20 years. So I have seen some dramatic changes here in the state, basically in urban areas. Bangor, I don't think, has a chance of recovering to what it was before it started ripping down all the beautiful brick downtown buildings. And that theory, I think, I apply especially to more rural communities like Lincolnville. You may not have to worry about replacing 3- and 4-story brick buildings, but I followed the request for the fast food, the name of the store that wanted to go on the corner out here. In fact, one of your residents called me and said, would you come out and look at this and give us your opinion? And that is a perfect example of an application by a developer to go in the wrong location. And once that store and the parking and the traffic are in there, you will never be able to recover what it was before. So I am very conservative in looking at changes. It's easy to make a change and very difficult to rectify it.
Thank you.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
That being said, it seems like you would, I'm surprised that you're not interested in serving as an alternate on like the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee. Because it seems like that's right now an active committee looking at, you know, sort of our general vision for the next 20 years. And I just want to make sure, because, you know, you said you only want to be a regular member, so your first choice is the other. Would you want to also be on a committee as an alternate on like comp review, or definitely not?
In all of the professional community work that I have done, I am not familiar of how the alternate position would work. The majority of my experiences, there have not been alternates, and I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that from my perspective of looking, so to be completely honest, that may be a bit of a premature decision for me to make, since I can't tell you, I can't describe to you how alternate members work. I can tell you from a very personal point of view that I'm itching to get back into this, into community service. And that is one of the driving factors that would propel me to take a lower choice if it was a full-time position. And I am willing to listen if anyone wants to voice an opinion about swaying me one way or the other. Tell me a bit about what are the percentages of alternate members to permanent members? And I'm assuming that they do not have a vote, but they do have a voice.
I'm not sure I'm the best one to answer that. I mean, my understanding is
It
that
depends from committee
Varies
to
from
committee,
committee.
depending on what the town charter lays out in terms of the structure of the committee. But you are correct in that they don't have a vote, but they are participant in the committee, absolutely. But not in terms of voting unless there aren't enough regular members present. And then the committee can designate an alternate as a voting member in that time.
Which is often the case. Which is often the case given attendance. It's often the case that alternates have as significant a role, significant a voting role as regular members, simply because attendance is not always 100%, and reaching a quorum often requires the alternate voting.
And
So.
the Board of Appeals, you know, may not have the sparkle that some, you know, but it is a very important committee in the process of how applications, permits, how
Oh,
things function here in the town. And I'm, you know, if I'm hearing that he prefers a regular appointment, it seems like a very good place to start. I hear your thoughts regarding the comprehensive plan review, but they are rather far on in their process, and he's always. I'm just thinking, you know, let's get him started doing something here in town, and if you feel like you have the bandwidth to come and participate more, you know, get back in touch with us. Because this, you know, your interest, your community interest form will remain on file.
Say the beginning of that again, please.
So what I'm inclined to do is to listen to your initial inclination of wanting to be a regular member on the Board of Appeals and move forward with that this evening. And then as you get involved should you want to expand to other committees, to come back and do that.
I think you may find that that's, works out better, is more appropriate for you to make the decision than for us to suggest what
Yeah.
board you may wanna,
Yeah, it's certainly.
might be most suited to, I guess.
Yes, yeah,
I kind of ask you to make that decision rather than us.
yes.
To summarize, to make sure it's clear in my mind,
Sure.
there is an alternate position available on the Planning Commission, and there is a full-time position available on the Appeals.
Correct.
And I have been thinking since our telephone conversation, and I was reminded of something that I hadn't thought of for a while, which is leaning me towards planning. Planning is in my blood, and you never know when planning is going to jump out at you and make some great opportunities possible. I'll give you the example. During the 20-year period that I lived in Camden, I served 2 terms on the then Camden School Board. And in alliance with Dave Farley, who I'm sure some of you know, he and I took on the whole rest of the school board. The topic was, do we renovate the existing, it's either the high school or the junior high school, but it was right in town.
Yeah, yeah.
Do we renovate that, or do we pursue the concept of a regional high school? And David and I were the only 2 members of the board that saw the planning issues and took on the entire board for about 6 months. And it was a very unattractive battle. And as you all know, fortunately, we achieved our goal. If anyone had asked me, are you going to be able to use some of your planning skills as a school board member? I would have said, most probably not. But I understand what you are most comfortable with. You put the ball back in my court and you want me to make the decision. And just so I'm crystal clear about this, if I come back and say I'm willing to be an alternate on planning, then does that mean that at some point shortly thereafter I'm going to get a letter saying, if you accept the position, we're offering you an alternate position on planning?
You would have to come back to us. But to be clear, if you are on the Board of Appeals, you cannot serve on the planning board.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's.
And as you and I talked, I wouldn't want to do that because the stress level would be.
You couldn't.
Well, yeah.
You simply couldn't legally.
No.
We wouldn't do it.
Okay, so that my decision will be communicated to you by letter.
Okay.
So do you wish us not to
Well-
make an appointment?
No, I would
Tonight?
love you to do that.
Well, if you
Okay.
want the alternate on the planning board as opposed to the regular on the Board of Appeals, if you indicate that, we could make a motion for that tonight.
That would be my preference.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay.
That would
Thank
be
you.
great if you would do that. It's
All
great.
right. Anything else for Mr. Shapiro?
No,
Okay, Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
thank you.
thanks very much, yeah.
Does someone care to make a motion?
Yeah, I move to appoint Andrew Shapiro as an alternate member of the planning board, with the term expiring in June of 2025.
So
Se-
moved?
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you all very much.
Yep.
And we have a liquor license renewal for Astor Rose / Youngtown Inn, properly Camino LLC, doing business as the aforementioned. It's a renewal. I don't think anything has changed. So I will entertain a motion.
I move the board approve and sign the liquor license application submitted by Camino LLC.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing nothing. All those in favor? Thank you all very much. And we have a representative here, Lars Hammer, to talk to us about National Culvert Removal, Replacement, and Restoration Grant Program, specifically referencing on Black Brook on Slab City Road. And we welcome you to come up to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. As you mentioned, I'm Lars Hammer. I'm from the Maine Department of Marine Resources. And we're looking at, I'm not going to repeat the name of the grant because it's very long, as you already stated, but it's through the Federal Highways Administration, and the grant program basically replaces or removes culverts that would improve fish passage into upstream habitats. And we're specifically interested in the Slab City Road culvert over Black Brook. It's currently 3 small culverts, and we'd be looking at replacing it with probably a 3-sided structure or maybe a small bridge of some kind to allow fish passage. And there's some documented Atlantic salmon habitat upstream of the crossing, which is our main interest in it. There's also there would be some benefits for other fish species downstream as well. And it would open up about just under 3 miles of river habitat upstream. We use a cost estimate software, or I guess it's more of a spreadsheet that DOT uses when they calculate all of a lot of their culvert projects. And we came up with a total cost of just under $1.5 million for the project. And because the Penobscot Nation, who is not here yet, I think Dan McCaw is supposed to be joining me at some point here, but the Penobscot Nation would be the lead applicant for the grant program, and because of that, no money would be required from the town to complete the project. So basically, we're just here to ask for your support in that and talk about how we can move forward through that project. I think that's about all I have at this point. Happy to take any questions from the board.
Yeah.
It mentions at most a 4-year time frame, but then says it might have become available for 2 or more years after the award. Does that mean it would be under? It doesn't mean 4 years of being under construction.
No. So basically, that part of it is part of the grant requirements that you just have to complete construction within 4 years. And then the 2-year piece is, so this is the second round of this grant opportunity. We were awarded funds last year, approximately $36 million throughout the state. And there's been a lot of, this was the first round of it, and so there's been a lot of kind of discussions of how things are going to move forward with federal highways, and so it's taken a while for those grant agreements to come into place. And so that's all that is, just saying that, if we do get this money, it might not be available for a few years from when we get it.
Yeah.
So, if we do get this money, so it's not a done deal at this point?
It is not, yeah. So we're just asking for the town's support in applying for this, and then hopefully we get the money. Last year, there was about 7 months between the application deadline and hearing about the money. This year's deadline is September 23rd, so I think I was thinking about April we might hear something back.
So you mentioned if the town is interested and other criteria can be met, what falls into that basket of other criteria being met?
Yeah, that's probably a leftover from some of the other town letters that I've been writing. And
fair enough.
because we have, that's
Okay.
So what would our share of the administrative, it sounds like we wouldn't be having to raise or appropriate funds for this, but what sort of administrative costs could we anticipate bearing?
Yeah, that would be probably the best question for the Penobscot Nation. They're obviously not here right now.
Okay.
The way we've done it in the past is the town can be as involved or not as they want to be. So you guys could, be in the selection process for selecting contractors and going over designs and all of that stuff. If you don't want to, you don't have to be.
Okay, so that's a movable target.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
What about construction timelines and needing to take into account school bus schedules and all that type of stuff?
Yeah, that's not anything that I know of off the top of my head for this project, but it's certainly things that we can discuss as the project moves forward and if it ends up getting funded.
It's likely to be the same in-stream window that we face all the time.
Yeah,
of not till
likely.
after July 15th, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and then before early October?
Yeah.
Is that the,
Yeah.
trying to remember.
I imagine this is a similar project to ones you've already done. How long do they usually take to complete, as far as the disruption of the road?
Yeah, so we, because it was the first year of the grant last year, there were a bunch of things to work out. We haven't actually gone to construction or anything on any of those projects. Typically, the whole from design and preliminary work through construction could take like 2 to 3 years, maybe a little bit longer. I was looking at a different project that was much more complex and bigger than this one, and I think they anticipated closing part of the road while still maintaining some traffic through for maybe 180 days. Like I said, that's a much more, I think that was a 60-foot bridge. We're looking at maybe a 20-foot structure, so it's likely that it could be done a lot quicker than that. But
Well, no, just my initial thoughts here are two. One is, how urgently would you need our support? And number two, I'm unwilling to commit our support until we hear from a representative from the Penobscot Indian Nation, because I don't know what our level of commitment would be. And so it'd be nice to hear from that person.
yeah,
So, but is this something you need a decision on before our next meeting, for example?
so ideally we would have, basically what we do is we provide you with a draft letter of support
Okay, yeah.
that we do to a bunch of towns, and
Yeah.
ideally we would have that prior to September 23rd, which is when the application deadline is.
9/23, okay.
Okay. And it sounds like a great, in principle,
Sure,
it
sure.
sounds, I mean, we've undertook similar efforts in our own community already,
Mhm.
saved for years
Right.
to tackle them. So I mean,
Oh, no, it sounds great, and I wouldn't want to withhold us acting on it, but I'd like to hear from that representative.
right.
Because I'd kind of like to get clear on to what extent the town may find itself in a complicated situation, or in a situation where it's doing more administrative work than we anticipate.
I mean, certainly if Dan McCaw is planning on rolling in here at some point,
Yeah.
Yeah.
depending on how we're doing in our agenda, and we have an opportunity to speak,
Yeah.
with consensus from the board, we wouldn't want his trip to be in vain.
Right.
But let's say we adjourn our meeting before he can get here, it seems like something, potentially you could have that draft letter before us
Mhm.
at our next meeting and be available for questions to more formally move it forward.
And he did say, just to jump in, he did say that he would be here 15 to 20 minutes late, which I think is right now. So hopefully he'll be rolling in the door
Okay.
any minute. I'll also note that the nation is planning to hire a project manager specifically for this project and the other couple that they're going to be putting in money for. So there will be that capacity through the tribe. They've done a lot of similar projects like this before. So
Okay.
I'm pretty confident that they would have the ability to move through the whole project phase without the town, if that's what you wanted, or however you'd like to move forward with things. But.
Robin's got another question.
Oh, no,
No, I thought you had.
I
thought you, yeah.
have a couple of questions.
Yes.
Is this something that you built that would be owned by the town?
Yes, so, it would be, like I mentioned, the crossing would likely be around 20 feet.
Mhm.
Typically, DOT will take over anything that's over 20 feet. With it being 20 feet, the town would likely still own it unless you guys figured out a way to work something else out with DOT. I know they do that occasionally, but.
And then, I'm okay with that, whatever. And then in terms of participation in the design, do we, as the town, hold, for lack of a better word, veto power over things like if, let's say, a three-sided box was gonna be sufficient, or a bridge,
Right.
and you wanted to build a bridge, and we said, no, three-sided box, because we can deal with a three-sided box, but a bridge is, we don't have any, and I don't believe we want any, that we're responsible for,
Yeah.
in terms of, the life cycle, and we, at some point, whatever we put in there, the community's gonna have to replace.
Mhm.
It may be 50 years from now, maybe 100 years from
Right.
now, but a box is easier to replace than a bridge.
Yeah, for sure.
And so do we have, how much control does the community have over the design, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I think in this case, especially considering it's just a 20-foot structure, I think as long as the crossing follows the design standards that the Federal Highways Opportunity
Mhm.
has, then I think whatever you want goes.
Okay, I mean, it just, we don't wanna set ourselves up,
Yeah.
or those that follow us in these roles in a bad way.
Right.
You know
Mhm.
what I'm saying?
Mhm.
That's-
And I would say that it's more than likely that it would be some sort of box structure given the size.
Okay.
I'm all set.
Yeah, so I think for now, until your counterpart shows up,
Yeah.
we'll leave it with the general consensus of, this sounds like a great idea. So let's move it to the next half step.
Mhm.
And, and if, Dan can get here in due time, then we'll expand on the conversation.
Great, sounds good.
All right, so
Thank you
we'll
very
have,
much.
thank you.
Thanks a lot.
So we'll have 9 sort of on hold.
Okay.
Okay.
There may be 9.5 to loop back to. And we have Lois Lyman here and Matt Eddy to give us an update from the Land Use Committee.
I just came to hear that.
Oh, perfect. Okay. I know. I was like, come on, Lois. Hi, Matt. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and letting me do this update. The committee has been meeting regularly since April. The first 2 meetings that we held really took the project from the moratorium base to putting it in context to what's been happening with reviews in the community, talking about the comprehensive planning process and where that process was, because that was a little bit of a discussion about the committee. So we reviewed the comp plan, and we noted the previous comp plan. There were 2 important points that came up. Number 1, it recommended site plan review ordinances, and that was the basis for the creation of this site plan review. And number 2, it also recommended the creation of small districts, village districts, as part of that comp plan, and that was something the community hadn't done. So you still basically have a 1 district zoning community, shoreland zoning aside. So we put off, our contract called for doing some engagement with the planning board and with the community at large. We put that off because the committee really wanted to walk through the design that they wanted to look at. We understood that what we were doing was likely a precursor to your comprehensive planning process and to ultimately your zoning ordinance rewrite process, whatever came out of that. So they took a step back and said, okay, the first conclusion is that it's unlikely that you could legally proposed an ordinance that would simply keep stores like Dollar Store out of the community, that didn't really have standing in court. It particularly became complex because of the 10,000 square foot equivalency, and we started looking at other projects in the community that are 10,000 square foot that likely would like to look for some additions in size. We felt that we would be getting into a restriction about a particular franchise that had implications that we didn't want to go down. So instead, we really began concluding that we needed to beef up the site plan review ordinance. And so that's what they've been working on the last 3 or 4 meetings. And we've been going through a red line process. We've done 3 red line edits thus far of the existing site plan review ordinance. We'll have a 4th coming up in September for some specific things the board asked me to do. And then we will be ready to talk to the planning board and talk to the community at large. I'll run through some of the things that we've talked about. We wanted to retool the waiver process. This was largely after we're going through and we're adding some fairly significant design standards. It's too bad Mr. Shapiro's not here. Reviewing some new design standards to more effectively deal with a franchise type proposal that would allow it to be a little bit more acceptable to both the community and allow the developer to be a little bit more creative. But we also thought we were concerned about it being an imposition to smaller businesses and smaller business design under 4,000 square feet. So we wanted to be clear that the criteria standards could be waived during a pre-application process so that a person could avoid expenses going into the process. And then with major, we would entertain in the pre-application process waivers for that standard, but we'd be very specific about what could happen. And that part of it, we're still working on, that waiver piece, but I think it's an important piece of how we think the ordinance would work overall. We also are recommending in one of the red lines is formal findings of fact in the ordinance, which is pretty standard practice in the land use profession. You folks didn't have any findings of fact. We'll tie those findings of fact to the ordinance itself. We've gone through that nomenclature. We might have to redouble as we go through some edits, but everything will be related so that they'll be doing a finding that it agrees with and does not do harm to the community in accordance with those standards. We have introduced landscaping and buffering standards, something that we clearly understood to be an issue in that last review, and particularly around parking lots. We updated the stormwater standards, particularly for design and passage, also appropriate, and also at least coming up to the 100-year storm, because your site plan review ordinance are silent on the issue. We also, you have 2 different, I don't know how it happened, we have 2 different design standards, chapter 12 and chapter 13. We're rolling those all into one and kind of making chapter 11 the very specific criteria according to the engineering design, the others more general review about the impact of the project. We introduced, in that process, we introduced a building and design standard. We expanded upon your existing. You did have some good initial design standards. We made them I think a little bit more extensive, and we're in the process of working that to make it more easy to understand. We introduced the idea of managing for different types of building materials, trying to avoid the standard franchise design, in which we've said that is specifically prohibited, that you've got to come up with a standard that's tied to the neighborhood, that's tied to Lincolnville, that's what blends with the community. Introduced new lighting standards, also established new performance standards that are based on ambient levels. If you're going to create noise, the noise shouldn't be beyond the ambient level. You can scientifically measure that. Hopefully you'll never be in a position to do that, but you'll have the ability to do that if you choose to. and the same thing with noise, vibration, odors, and lighting. And that's really the realm of where we are. I would say that, and I would look to Lois, I would say we're pretty close to the actual red line design and the changes that we want to make, and we'll be ready to begin to talk to the community about them.
Exciting. Questions for Matt?
Just when you say you'll be ready to talk to the community, are you thinking like October, November?
The idea was to set those times in September.
Okay.
September is just kind of cleaning up the last changes that we've talked about. And they tasked me with figuring out the waiver piece. And it's interesting. I mean, there are a few other communities going through the same thing that you are right now, some of them for the same reason. And so we're combining that work, and we're kind of hoping that in the end it'll develop a model for site plan review for small communities. And then we're probably going to submit that to the state and ask them to begin rethinking the model that the state presently has.
So the moratorium deadline is feasible in your mind? We don't have to be looking at another possible meeting to extend it again?
Oh, yeah. You're looking to,
Yeah.
in all
we are.
likelihood,
Sure.
But
We are
it's, we have unlimited
Right.
rules.
We
well,
just have to
as
keep-
long as the problem still exists and as long as you're making reasonable progress.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the moratorium expires, I believe, in early November. So the board, in all likelihood, my estimation, will be looking forward to another hearing in October. So to extend it again, because it's certainly not gonna be ready for a vote anytime soon.
No, not if we're going to do the engagement piece
Yeah.
correctly.
Well, because realistically, satisfying the issue, the problem that that caused us to have this moratorium is changing the ordinance.
Yeah,
And so,
or deciding the ordinance doesn't need to be changed, but I think we've
Right.
already cleared that hurdle that it
so,
does.
yeah, so we're
Okay.
a bit, yeah. Any other questions for Matt?
Thank you very
No.
much.
Yeah.
Thank
Very
you
good.
so much.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Really-
Have a great night.
Really appreciate
we
it.
will.
Good rest of the summer.
Oh, you too, thank you.
All we could do
It's
is.
just like,
Now I noticed, we have Mr. McCaw here. Thank you so much for
My
making.
apologies for being so late. I was tied up and got here as fast as I
No,
could.
that's okay. My
Just
only
no straight
question,
shot.
my only question is we have a remote participant.
The remote participant doesn't yet know that he's close to being on, or does he?
Does not.
Does not, because Matt's gonna text him when we get close, so go back
Okay,
to 9.
so-
Give me 5 minutes and I'm gonna text him. and he'll-
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the board's pleasure?
I love it. Yes,
Okay.
please, yeah.
So can we invite you up to the podium, because we have folks that watch us remotely and whatnot, so if you'd come up to the podium, introduce yourself, and then I think the board has some questions for
All
you.
right, great.
Thank you very much for coming in.
No, thanks for entertaining the idea. My name is Dan McCaw. I work for the Penobscot Indian Nation. I work as the program manager for the Fisheries Department, which is underneath the umbrella of the Department of Natural Resources. And we have been engaged, specifically the fisheries program has been engaged in doing these types of projects, road stream crossings on tribal land and off tribal land, since I came on in January of 2011. We've handled many millions of dollars have come through me and through our department, and have been through federal grants and other things, and really worked collaboratively with a lot of different partners, to include, we just were funded to work with the city of Rockland to work on one of their lake outlets, also a lake association down this way at Pitcher Pond, and also a private landowner in Searsport. So the tribe is starting to do more and more things off of tribal land, and to do that in tandem with municipalities and private landowners and lake associations, things like that. And one of the advantages I see, and I know this is a long-winded introduction, the tribe has the opportunity, and most times when it comes to large pots of federal money, the tribe has unique opportunities to obtain that money, secure that money, and most of it is done without the need for matching funding. So it's a win-win from my perspective, from the tribal perspective, for the river, and it's a win-win for the landowners, municipalities, and the tribe, because sort of a completely connected, healthy, resilient Penobscot River and all its tributaries is good for all of us. So thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So question for Dan.
One of you specifically had a question earlier, I forget.
Sure,
Well,
yeah,
sounds like
Steve.
Steve does.
So it's around the delivery or the implementation, if this moved forward, the involvement of the town with the decision makers on the design, the scheduling of the build, cooperating with that schedule for school bus routes, all that type of stuff are the things that are least important to me.
Sure. Those are the things that would have to be discussed at length, right? The tribe would manage ultimately the bookkeeping for the project, would have to provide progress reports, final reporting to the agency that granted the money. But those are the types of things that the tribe doesn't know and would rely on local expertise to lay that out. It's very easy to, I'm a fish biologist by trade. I've seen enough designs at this point that I'm not completely a novice, but I really rely on my engineers that we hire and consultants to walk me through it and why it's specific. And something that would be built on like a public road is very different than would be built on like a logging road, unapproved sort of road. So as far as implementation is concerned, once we had the design, we would review that together with the engineer who came up with the final design or the near final. And everyone was satisfied that it met everyone's needs as far as loading and width and span and those kinds of things. We would then go into the idea of permitting. Permitting is normally handled by a consultant because it's a very legal, rich, it's a very specific process, right? There's a lot of very specific things that have to happen, and the consultants and engineering firms really are very good at that. So that would be handled. And then once we had everything in place, when a contractor we would go out for bidding, contractors would review the bids together. We would choose hopefully the least expensive one of all of them. That's kind of the way it works, so long as it met the standards of what we wanted to have done. Then we would have to have very specific conversations with the contractor to say, we need it built within this window. These are the bounds. We will work with you to shut the road down, provide interim passage. Normally they would shut down one lane, then another. There may be a time of complete blockage, but those are all things that the town would have extremely, so much input into. So I could understand, and the contractor and the consultants could understand, what are the needs? Exactly like you talked about, people getting home from work, school bus routes. Most of the time the work window is late summer through early fall or mid-fall, at the end of July through the end of October.
Yeah.
It's sort of the low flow period for these streams. So that would overlap with the starting of school and things like that. But yeah, it would definitely be, the tribe views this as a partnership. Ultimately the reporting has to go back from the tribe to the federal government. But all those decisions we would make together, and the idea is to hire a full-time project manager at the tribe. That I would be sort of the interim and the go-between a little bit, but that would be handed to this person, and you would have them sort of handcuffed to you for the sake, for the term of this, to determine exactly what's the right way to do it. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah, and I had a question earlier about administrative burden on the community, but what I'm hearing from you is the project manager would largely be the point person in terms of bearing the burden of most of the administration, with the exception of interfacing with the board and creating those components to, say, an RFP of requirements of the community and that kind of thing. Am I correct?
Right, yeah, all the administrative burden would fall upon the tribe, and the tribe would handle all that. And certainly, if we would have conversations very early in the process about what kind of community engagement does the town want to have,
Mm-hmm.
and how can the tribe help facilitate that, and lead through that. So the burden to the town would be extremely minimal, except for providing that key information of how it needs to be done, what are the community needs and concerns, and what are the things that we don't know that only the town and the folks that live here would know.
Okay. David, did you want to re-ask the question that you had
Sure, I
asked?
asked Lars about ownership when the project's done. I assume that would become the town's structure or crossing again.
Most of the time what happens is there's a 5-year waiver of liability. That because the tribe is the one who is executing the project using federal money, the tribe would be the one liable if it wasn't built up to standards, like you had erosion issues or things like that. The tribe would be liable for normally 5 years, and that would be a document that the tribe would sign with the town. After the 5 years, the tribe would step back, and all liability for the structure would go back to the town. But that's the way that the federal government likes to handle those types of things, so that the funders have a direct link to who's in charge and who isn't.
Yeah.
And that's not, the tribe has no interest in owning that crossing at all. But
I didn't think so, but I was hoping.
But if there are future maintenance needs for that would be tied into this whole project, and we would be looking to do, surveys of that site twice, 3, 5 times a year, whatever, afterwards for a certain amount of years to see other erosion issues. Are there? Most of the time there aren't those issues because they're overbuilt, if anything, but you never know. And if there are, then the tribe can reach back in and get some money to repair those kinds of things and then report on it and those kinds of things. But that's normally the way that works. There's a 5-year liability that would fall on the tribe.
And the other question was basically, does the town have, for lack of a better word, veto power over certain aspects? Like, I think I used the example with Lars, if at one point he's talked about a possible 3-sided box. We're familiar with those. We've got a couple that
A 3-sided box?
well, with
Sure.
natural bottom,
yeah.
natural stream bottom, versus a bridge. Because at some point, not in my lifetime, this is going to need to be replaced, assuming, people continue.
Hopefully beyond your children's lifetime, but
Yes,
eventually, yes.
Well, I hope my kids live forever, but
Right.
whatever. But the cost and what's associated with replacing or maintaining a box, which is pretty close to zero maintenance, versus a bridge, which can be a little more expensive. If the town just says, yep, let's go ahead and do it, and your consultant came in and said, oh, we want a 300-foot long bridge, we might be nervous.
Right, and I think one of the
ongoing
challenges,
costs.
we would certainly have that conversation. The tribe is not gonna make you do something you're not comfortable with. And if it came down to it and the town said, no, we really want to pursue a different design, that's exactly what we would do, and we would do it together. A lot of times the design is based upon how wide it needs to be.
Right.
There becomes a tipping point where you can't do a arch culvert or even a box culvert. A lot of the times, an arch is more stable long-term, at least that I had seen. But the boxes, they're reinforced concrete, right? They're very strong. But as that span gets out, and that'll be dictated by what does the 100-year flow event look like? What is the width of the stream at that point in time? And is there a risk to the abutments at that 100-year flow event? Now, one thing that the tribe's been doing is looking beyond the 100-year flow event. We've seen, in the past 2 years in Maine, we've seen 3 or 4 100-year flow events back to back to back. So it's becoming more common. So the tribe is starting to think about, okay, what's the 200-year flood event? What do we think that looks like? And so if you have the money within the budget to say, let's overbuild this a little bit just to be safe, it tends to go to that way if we can afford it, right? If the money is there to do it. And another thing that'll happen is if we have an engineer look at this site, and that's where some of these numbers are coming from now, they would say, okay, if we build something here, it's going to cost $1.5 million to $2 million. Let's say when all is said and done, final surveys are done, and I'm guessing a lot of surveys have been done at this site already, right? At least in the past 10 years. As far as how big is that stream and what these structures need to be to move that water. If we get to the point where we say, okay, the town and the tribe have decided we want this structure, but we're $1 million short, there is going to be no problem with getting that $1 million at any time, because there is money everywhere right now, everywhere, to do these kinds of jobs. And we may need to delay the project for a year in order to secure that funding. But when you go to the federal government and you say, we've got a project that's 80% paid for, the design has been done, everyone agrees on what's going next, all we need is that little bit to get us over the hurdle. Those are the projects that are funded so quickly, as opposed to from the start. So no decisions will be made by the tribe in isolation.
Great.
That's what I assumed, but
Thank
it's
you.
nice to hear you
Yeah.
say it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank
And
you.
Lars said similar.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Any other
No.
questions?
No, I'm so glad that you came.
Yeah, we really appreciate you making the
I'm
effort
so sorry
to
for
come in.
being,
Oh,
for
that's
being
no
late. I
problem.
had
No.
training this afternoon and it went very, very,
No,
very late.
that's all right. You know, it's so worth, revisiting this conversation, and I think we can just reiterate what we said to Lars is that, we're interested in moving forward. I believe we're gonna get a draft letter back, and then we'll proceed.
And one thing that and Lars and I will be talking about this, but one thing that I encourage you to think about is there's a lot more to the river system, to Black Brook and the duck trap and all these kinds of things. There's a lot more than just Atlantic salmon going on here. There's a lot more. Black Brook is a very cold tributary with quite a lot of habitat there. So we're really talking brook trout as well. And I think one thing that we would encourage is to think about public outreach. Like, not only during the process, but after that, to memorialize it. And the tribe, like maybe there's a little place somewhere close there where we could have a pull-off, with a couple of kiosks that explain the connection, what critters use this stream, why it's important to the greater ecosystem, who are the project partners, and things like that. That way, at any time in the future, citizens, people looking around, or people, have a public spot where people can access it. I don't know if it's possible or not at that site, but it would be nice, because then what we have experienced at the tribe is that if you provide that little bit of ongoing public education and outreach, you often get phone calls that say, hey, I know of a site over here that's in my backyard. Can we do something over here? Because this looks great. And so that's just something that I would encourage you to think about. And it wouldn't be something that would, again, be a burden to the town. It would be something that the tribe would work with the town to say, what makes sense? What's appropriate? But
Yeah.
anyway, thank you
This is a
very
very exciting thing,
I
yeah.
appreciate your
Yeah,
time.
thank you.
It is.
So Lars, either you or Dan will send me a sample and we'll turn it around and hit your deadline, it sounds like.
Oh, good.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Without making you having to come back, but you're welcome to come to the next meeting too, if that's
We
of
love,
interest to you.
we love people coming and
Yeah.
being
Yeah,
in the
no,
room.
Happy to come back, by the way, for sure.
If I can make this thing work.
5 minutes, you say?
I don't think it'll take that long.
Want me to give my sales pitch first?
Sure.
Well,
Yeah.
no, we-
Thank you, gentlemen.
Keep my
Thank you very
mind.
much.
Thank
I
you.
won't steal his thunder.
Okay.
But you can drag it on long enough for his little.
So, in a continuous effort to organize the harbor,
Mm.
I've been doing some research. A lot of towns are using these online programs. There are 3 or 4 different ones that I found that people can pay online. All of our moorings are on an interactive, essentially like a Google Earth, and you can just click on one. It tells you who owns that mooring, what size boat's supposed to be there. All the work that Melissa does by mailing out 70 envelopes every year would be
An email.
none.
Yeah.
Or if you guys ask, hey, how many people are on that wait list anyway? Well, we have to go pull manila folders now, one at a time.
Yeah.
So I did a Zoom with this company. I think they overestimated Lincolnville. They're used to hundreds of thousands of dollars revenue in harbors,
Uh-huh.
and they that's how they charge quarterly.
Mm-hmm.
So they're willing to give us a break where we are such a small harbor. We want to get into Maine, which is great. And so for Melissa, David, and I especially, it would save a lot of time. We think we would generate a little more revenue because we would be more organized.
Mm-hmm.
And there would be like a link on the town website too, where if you were on a wait list, you don't need to call the office anymore. You can just get right in, look for your name, see where you're at, see if you're moving down the list or not. So
Rob's with us. Can he hear us?
yes, there we go. I'll let him.
Great.
Oh, can we hear you?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, everyone, thanks for having me tonight. My name is Rob. I am the co-founder and CTO of the company called Town Mornings. I'm not entirely sure which path we'll go down tonight, but I will give you a high-level overview and we can discuss any questions you have or anything else you want to see. So if it's okay with everyone, I'm going to share my window here. We can all get a quick overview of what this is. Let's see here, this should be the right one. No, it's all right. Okay, so Time Mornings is a web application. The intent behind this application is for the harvest to manage all of their waterfront assets, moorings, docks, permits, really anything that can be managed by your harbor. And it allows your boating community to also use the application to do what they need to do. Things like paying bills, signing up for mooring wait lists, right, any of those sorts of things. Quick overview. When harbor staff logs in, they'll come and see this screen. This map is based on a town in Massachusetts called Marion. There's quite a few moorings here, but it's great. It'll show things like moorings you have available, moorings you have unassigned, and moorings with issues, such as expired inspections, or overdue ones. So this is really just going to give you a quick overview of what's going on in the harbor. To the right-hand side here, you can just see the list of moorings. This is, almost everything in the system is searchable. So you get great. I'm going to cheat here because I see mooring 1001 on the screen, but we can totally do that and also just zoom in on it, and you can see all the details here. You can also click on these numbers. It'll go to details of the moorings. Things like all the mooring details, ground tackle, inspection. So in a broad overview, right, we have this moorings tab here, which really is just showing the map. But we also have all the permits in the system, right? In case of, this is again, mostly based on Marion's data, but they have berths, dinghies, docks, there's all sorts of things here. It also manages all the wait lists. If we look at some of these, you can see the wait lists, you can move them around, you can, assign moorings from the wait list, you can remove things from the wait list. We also show all the vessels in the system. This probably isn't the most super useful screen all the time, but one thing that users of the system can do, they can log in and they can request updates to their own vessels electronically, so you don't have to call or get paid for any of those sorts of things. And then the harbor master can log in, see what's changed. They can add anything they want. They can approve and disapprove. One of the other areas of the system is this is our development system, so it's not completely intact. When I click on the wrong thing, there we go. You can see all the invoices in the system. These can be mailed out electronically, as well as printed and mailed out, using normal mail. You can see things like if they're paid, if they haven't paid, if I late fees automatically. You can see details of various bills here. This is what you'll see, but it's also what the user logging in will see. One of the system is that it also lets them pay online. Right now, we're integrating with a couple of town payment systems. We have integrated with what's called UniPay for Marion, and we're integrating with City Hall systems for another town over in Buzzards Bay. But we can connect to pretty much any payment system, or we can provide a more generic one. So a user can log in, see this view, see their bill. They can sign it here, and once they do that, well, they're already paid. But if they hadn't paid the bill, they can continue the payment and pay online, via credit card, bank account, any of that, and that's kind of it. So that's usually pretty simple for the users. And then you have all sorts of other functions to manage. We have this permit manager. It lets you set all of the fees and any of the permits you need. So most towns have different website, and they'll adjust those automatically. Let's see. And then also we have a feature called pump outs. I think that might have said you did some pump outs, I don't remember honestly. But we do a system where someone can go on the system, request a pump out. You can get notified via email and using these screens, and you can see some details here. And you can go and accept pump out, reject pump out. And once you do that, you actually enter the pump out in the system. Let's say we didn't expect it, but in the complete, you say when you completed it. And also, Massachusetts, harbors get reimbursed for some of what they do here. So you can enter, I pumped out, I don't know, 50 gallons, update that, and then you will have a report here that shows what you've done in different time periods. So you can just submit that if May supports that type of thing and get reimbursed for it. So that's kind of the quick review of everything in the system. So I guess actually one last thing. We have a bunch of applications here to be on the wait list. These are also all electronic. You can choose locations or show a map there. You can choose a vessel or add a new one. We usually require the length of the vessel, type of it, and similarly to paying bills online, you can type something here, sign it, but then you can also go to, all right, well, I missed that one. So that will bring you to your payment, and you can pay that online as well. And then as a user, if you log in, you can see anything you have here, your permits, invoices, applications, vessels. You can also upload documents. You can see payments you've made. You can see your pump out requests, all those sorts of things. So it's really useful for sort of both parties, the harbor master and staff, and also the end users using the system. If you have boat yards who actually like commercial yards, we support commercial yards logging in and seeing and or changing some of their data as well. So the overall goal of all of this being to alleviate a lot of the work on the harbor staff themselves, letting other people collaborate with the system to do what's needed. Okay, so I'm going to stop there because I'm talking before. It seems like a very long time. May not have been, but perhaps it was. And I'm going to ask you if you have any questions on any of this, or if there's anything you want to dive into more detail, or anything that I just haven't answered at all for you.
Questions?
Well, comment, it seems like it'd be great if we could get the town into the 21st century with some software like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no question. The one question I would have, and maybe it's premature to ask this, has to do with the service fees. I see that's 1% of revenues, expected revenues, for 3 years. I was wondering how long that 1% number would obtain, I guess. Or am I out of bounds asking that question?
Yeah, so are you asking after 3 years what happens to the 1% fee?
Yeah.
So really, aside from a few edge cases, 1% is our base fee. We usually do tend to have a minimum. That's what we charge, but given the size of the harbor, it'll just be 1%. I can't afford, maybe it goes up a little bit, maybe 1.25, but like in general, it's going to be around 1% for as long as I can tell.
Okay.
I don't foresee that coming back.
And you do know what 1% of our harbor revenues represent, right?
I do. So part of the reason we're doing this with you here is, well, a couple reasons actually. Matt managed to find us despite our really horrible Google ratings. We had a couple nice chats with him, and we really liked Matt. And we have no real presence in Maine yet. And so given that it is a very small harbor, that it probably won't, it's not going to cost us massive amounts of money to run it all, we figured it'd be a good entry to the market. And, one of the reasons we started the company in general, a little backstory here, is because my co-founder Randy, who isn't able to make it here tonight, but he has a boat over in Rhode Island, and he was using a system called online moorings, and just as a boater, not as doing anything with the harbor staff at all, but there were always issues trying to use And so his initial goal in starting this with me is to give the end user a better experience, a better way to see what's going on with their, vessels, with their permits, with their moorings, and to help them out. And then we started to see some of the harbor masters around Buzzards Bay. It was all really nice people, and we got very friendly with everyone. And like, you know what? We'll help make life better for everyone. And yes, we'll make money along the way because we can't run the business on no money. But that's not. I mean, our end goal isn't to make lots of money. It is legitimately to help everyone out. And so I know what you make. What you make, and I am pretty sure you'll find a lot more money in doing this. So 1% next year, it'll be a little more, because I'm pretty sure you'll find a bit more revenue. But in general, we're doing it because we want to make everything better, and because we're trying to branch out into a lot of different areas. So we figured, you know what? Going into it, we had no idea what your revenue was. And we got kind of like, can we really do it for? And like, yeah, we can. It won't cost that much. So, that's the offer we have.
Yeah.
Okay.
1% for 3 years, and it'll probably remain the same beyond that.
Okay. Well,
Yes.
thank you.
Steve?
A few questions. I do a lot of software eval stuff, so just to ribble them off. Years in business, number of customers. Have you ever had a cybersecurity or security incident? And what security standards do you follow?
So, we've never had a cybersecurity incident. We've been in business for about 3 years now. We have 2 signed customers, 2 should be signing actually this week, and we have a few others we're trying to work with implementing. So in terms of, we have under 10 customers. But with that being said, the customers we do have actually advocate to surrounding harbors that they should switch to us as well. So our customers, we both love it. So we do anticipate getting many more on very soon. And so, yes, so cybersecurity standards, we do follow NIST password guidelines. We do run everything in Google Cloud. So for the most part, we do take that along on a lot of what they have for security as well. We have everything over, encrypted and trained over TLS. All of Google storage is encrypted at rest. And we expose no unnecessary endpoints outside of the cluster at all.
Thank you.
Steve, would you translate?
He's doing the basic. The key things with when you're putting data up in the cloud is it's encrypted at rest, it's encrypted in transit, and then if you're using one of the primary cloud mechanisms like Google, you're oftentimes forced into many ways to do the security. So they're not just winging it on their own; they're having to live within an already established environment. Those are the key parameters there.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks.
We also take 3 database backups a day and keep those both in Google Cloud and offsite, just in case anything atrocious happens. And just sort of background reference before this, I spent probably 10 or so years in various cybersecurity companies. So one of my sort of key ads here is I am very conscious of the cybersecurity landscape.
Fantastic. Other questions?
I do not.
I mean, at the brief glance, as a user of a competitor system myself in a neighboring harbor, this looks better, easier. Yeah, just kind of heads and shoulders above another system I'm familiar with.
And I think somebody said it, but any of these systems, you're going to find revenue when you start using them. And you're probably going to pay for the 1% with the additional revenue you find.
Yeah, and I really think that it goes, leaps and bounds towards that, creating a fair and equitable harbor for all of our public and users, and I love the fact that other commercial entities, so the other boatyards that utilize our harbor also have that as a resource. It's pretty great, yeah. So, Matt, did you have things you wanted to add?
No.
Okay.
Well, Melissa does, but
Ye-
just the time is gonna save her when I showed her this.
I mean, I just think, my time on the board, and trying to look information up in all those different manila folders, and mooring permits getting confused with other mooring people
Yeah.
with similar names, and just all the, it's a lot to keep track of, and I'm very admiring of our staff being able to do what they've done, but why not make it easier?
Great.
So I don't know if we need to keep Rob online anymore. Any other questions that anyone can think of right now, or can we turn him loose?
I'm good.
Karen, you look thoughtful? No? All right. Rob, thank you so much for the presentation and the information, and I think we'll have a little discussion and get in touch with you.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, everyone. If you have any other questions, feel free to get in touch with me. I'll be around all the time. So, much love if you need me.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Good night.
Bye.
I've got a question for Matt.
You wanna come up?
Yes, please.
What takes you to them?
So, there's two companies out of the four I found that were they were user friendly. The other one was Online Moorings.
Watch your eyes.
And Hartswell uses them.
Yeah.
Online, that's another program. My aunt's the town manager there, and they're looking. She put me onto them. They're looking to switch from a competitor. The fees are a lot more. These guys, I did a Zoom with them. I think they thought we probably generated a lot more than we do. They usually charge 3%,
Yeah.
and it's a $5,000 setup fee. They're waiving that, and they're dropping us to $1,000 to get their name out there and get in Maine.
Yeah, it seems like they wanna get this up this way.
Yeah. If I open up online mooring, and we could do it right now, you wouldn't see a lot of differences on the functions and what each provide. I like these guys, and then
Okay.
they've been pretty good. They reached back out to me after the Zoom. They made us this offer. So we're talking $160 a year.
Mm.
Maybe with any luck, it's $200, $250 next year, but we're making,
Yeah.
the other 99% of that, where we find these fees that we're not charging right now.
Mhm.
Right.
Not looking to charge people more, but
No, but
they said every harbor they've had, you'd be surprised of the revenue that you're missing before you can track it like this.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's worth us pursuing
Sure.
100%. I mean, we don't have the money in the budget, but is this something that we can take from harbor savings to fund so that, I think we should have the conversation during budget season so that we can plan
yeah,
ahead, but, can we pull from harbor savings to get the ball
right,
rolling?
cause this deal isn't gonna last. Eventually, another town in Maine's gonna call them, and they're
Right, right.
gonna jump on it.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, and I feel like we can make your job easier, Melissa's job easier, and it's all in pursuit of,
I think the biggest liability is we're gonna have residents or people using the harbor with their debit cards, their credit cards, as long as you're comfortable with that, I think the most
I
about
looked
it.
online, they're actually using an independent third party to do all the processing and
Okay.
stuff, which
So
is
nothing
fully
we need
above
to-
board, fully.
yeah.
Okay,
I mean, given that we take that responsibility on, here in the town
Yeah.
office already, and,
Yep.
okay.
um,
And people will still be able to come in and write a check or pay cash for
Yeah.
their,
Yep.
and if you get people that don't prefer to use their credit card, that's gonna be okay too.
yeah, because you can still do that administrative piece from the back end, and it should take that much less
Right.
time
Sure.
to do it, right?
And like you said, like late notices, you saw that one harbor, they had like $700,000
Yeah.
in and late money, it would most likely be Melissa, not me, but she could just print those right out.
Yeah,
There's no more figuring out, you print them right out of there, email and print.
yep. One question I didn't think to ask, but just occurred to me is, can that system also be used as sort of a, I don't know, like constant contact kind of thing for all of our harbor users, where, say, you could draft, like, a hurricane's coming through and you
Oh,
could
yes.
send
Yep.
out a weather alert.
It's a
to-
mass email. Yep.
Okay,
He could have showed you that if we would have thought
I
of it.
did,
Yep.
it just occurred to me,
Yep.
but,
Anything like
'cause
that.
I-
Yes,
that kind of thing is
Yep. absolutely.
awesome.
Increases, if you increase or decrease,
Yep.
warnings, any of that.
Yep, okay, great,
Which would be really handy, like we've been having winch issues down there.
yep,
You could put it right out there and everybody's gonna get an email. The winch is gonna be down tomorrow from 9 to noon,
yeah,
something like that.
yeah, that's great, that's great.
That's awesome.
Okay, so what else do you need from us?
Well, we'll wanna make sure, I haven't even read the agreement, but there's, fine print.
Sure,
We need to do that type of review,
Yep.
but outside of that, if you're all right with us signing up for 1% of revenues, we'll have Matt get in touch with them and say, yep, we're just reviewing the agreement, and if everything's hunky-dory there, we'll sign up.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a term length on the contract?
It's 3 years.
Years, okay.
yep,
Cause they're gonna have quite a bit of time investing getting us set up,
Mhm.
so,
Okay.
And we're gonna have a bit of a learning curve,
yeah.
and the users are gonna have a bit of a learning
Oh,
curve,
sure,
you
yeah.
know? It's like anything else.
Yeah.
First time you do it, it's, oh my,
Yep.
and then.
but there's always the default of coming in and, yeah, so,
I think people are gonna like it.
yeah,
I really do.
Nice.
yeah. Yes, yeah, for sure. That's
Cool.
awesome, thank you so
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
for doing this research and bringing it to us.
So
It's
do we need to
exciting.
make a motion to
I don't think so.
review?
No, because you'll have to pay the bill when the bill comes, so.
Yeah,
Or they deduct it right out of the fee. I
thank
don't
you
even
so
know
much,
that
Matt.
works.
Good job, Matt,
That's
thanks.
awesome.
Let's see, and agenda item number 12, we apparently fell flat on the date that we wanted to meet with them, they can't do it, so in your packet are some alternatives. What does the board want to do?
I can't do Wednesdays, so the 15th is the day that would work for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say the 15th
Ooh,
was my
5
first
PM I
choice.
can, sorry, I forgot the 5 PM, so either
Oh.
day is good.
I was gonna say the 15th would be my preference.
Yeah, mine too, actually, yeah.
Karen, you okay with the 15th?
I guess. Hey.
It's all right.
Unless something comes up.
You can say your piece, it's all right.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll shoot for the 15th then.
Okay.
All righty.
Tuesday, 15th, okay.
And then, Mr. Late, the floor is yours regarding a conversation regarding public safety speed control.
Yes, I had reached out to ask David if I could just have that on this agenda, just for a quick conversation. I've had the opportunity, because I'm trying to do better myself, of doing a lot of walking around town and, believe it or not, running. And it does not seem to matter what day of the week it is, it doesn't matter what time it is. There is not a time go by, but what there are people coming in and out of town at a high rate of speed. A lot of it's going on Route 52, going right through Lincolnville Center,
Mhm.
but a lot of it is 235 Heel Road.
Mhm.
And I wasn't gonna mention Hill Road, cause that's where I live, but someone is gonna get hurt. I'm wondering if we could ask the town administrator to, this would be twofold, reach out to our representatives at, Waldo County Sheriff's Department and see if we can have a more prominent presence here in town. And we're not gonna cover all the time frames, because I think that would be expensive for the
Mhm.
Waldo County Sheriff's Department, but I feel if there was an ask to have a little bit more of a presence here, that is first. It would be great if they could do that. The other thing is I would like to know what they could offer us as a town on a regular basis, which I'm sure would require,
A contract, you
a
mean?
contract.
Mm.
And see if that's something we could talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not thinking we need a police department. That is not what I'm thinking. But things have changed here in town, and there's a lot more going on in this town. There are detours now, and there's big trucks coming through town, and they don't care. They just don't care.
Yep.
In the mornings, coming down 173 into the town, there are big trucks
Mhm.
using their Jake brake,
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
but they're not at 25 miles an hour.
Yeah.
25 miles an hour is slow,
Yeah.
Yep.
but it's not for Lincolnville Center.
I'm consistently tailgated. I'm going the speed. I got pulled over, I don't know, 30 years. I think I was going like 7 miles over the speed,
Yeah.
you know, and ever since then, 25 miles an hour, but people are piled up on me.
Sure.
But it's happening up 235 by the school, past the salt sand shed.
Yeah.
If you are walking on 235, you're taking your life in your own hands
Mm.
because it is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I just feel if we indicated that there's a presence around here from time to time, which people couldn't really figure out when an officer's gonna be here and when they're not, that they would pay more attention and try to make a diligent effort to slow down.
Yeah.
That crosswalk that we've got coming across by the library with the thing in the middle of the road. My wife and I were walking through town Sunday morning, and before we got to that warning in the middle of the road was hit 3 times before we got by it. And vehicles going over the speed limit,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it's like, come on.
Yep.
I've been dragging that thing out of the ditch.
Yeah, I bet you have.
Down over the hill.
Yeah, people just don't care. And if you stand there and go like this or whatever, you get the high sign.
They,
Yeah.
they flip you off.
Yeah,
'Cause I've
and
been
had a
flipped
guy
off.
stop the other day, get out of his truck.
Oh,
And I just asked him, I'm like, is there any chance I could get you to slow down a little bit?
Well, I hear you on the center, but I think that unfortunately Lincolnville is becoming a default bypass.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and
It is.
it's also duck trap to Youngtown
I'm sure
over,
it's tough.
Yeah,
you know, to,
it's the whole town.
it's the route around Camden, and then it's the route to Belfast that, you know,
Sure. Yeah.
those two sort of bypasses that people take to avoid
Yeah.
the heavy traffic areas, and
Oh, yeah.
so,
With the store being open all the time now, and now they're building a reputation, and they've got a good reputation. There's a lot of people coming and going there,
Yeah, there is.
7 days a week.
And, yeah, and I think it's worth, asking some, Matt or Whitney from the store what their impressions are of the traffic. And also, to what extent they might be considering traffic calming situations, like a crosswalk, for example. I know that's a whole DOT thing.
I'll tell you, as a former
Yeah.
representative of that business, you can't, it's not a possibility.
I know, but I'd like to hear from them what they, I mean, under new ownership, and are they willing to do anything? I'm not suggesting that that's a possibility, let alone a probability.
Yeah, because
But I'd like to hear from them.
we met with the DOT,
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
building that out.
I'm
and-
sure you did, yeah,
and
no, the whole landing thing and,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, they were just like, no, you can't here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd like to hear it again myself, and, partly because, I don't see how this town's gonna move the needle with the Maine Department of Transportation unless the town is persistent and annoying, to tell you the truth.
Excuse me?
And if that means being repetitive. That's just my feeling,
Yeah, Robin?
Why did the four-way stop go away at 173 Hill
When-
Road?
When I met with the DOT, specifically regarding the general store, It is largely because the DOT is in service to the most efficient flow of traffic from point A to point B. And so,
So they got rid of the four-way
Yes.
stop?
Yeah.
and they will not consider reinstating it. At least that was,
And we can't put one up because they're numbered roads, I mean, state roads, we don't have any
correct.
choice. Same thing with, say, Heel Road and 235. I'm just thinking, last spring, they changed that one part of 235 in Union or Warren. I'm not exactly sure where the town line is, but it was an intersection where they turned it into a four-way stop where it used to be just, 235 had the right of way and they made it a four-way stop because of accidents. But
That was the other unfortunate takeaway that I found rather dismaying, is that until there is sufficient
oh, jeez.
data to support a change in alteration of the flow of traffic, which translates to fatal deaths.
So it has to be reactive, not proactive.
That's macabre, it
Basically.
really is, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not to say that perhaps representation or administrative policy or decision-making hasn't changed in the last five to 6 years, but, I wouldn't ever wanna dissuade this board from, say, formally reaching out to the DOT and saying, but I don't wanna co-opt Kern's initial request of this board concurring or not to ask David to reach out to our Waldo County Sheriff's Office as a more near term traffic calming presence in the community and what our options may be there. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep. It's kind of a twofold ask. It's what can we do immediately?
Yep.
Can you help us immediately? And then can we talk about the future? What could you offer us for more consistent protection?
Well, yeah. Along this lines of the second ask, more consistent protection. The Waldo County Sheriff has offered to come here and speak to what kind of contract options are available in municipalities. And he shared with me one that he has shared with Northport. And this is a blueprint template as an example. And I think it's worth our while, definitely, to have him or a representative come in and share that kind of information. So I'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility for state police too? I feel like I've seen the one time I saw someone pulled over in the center, it was a state police car, but I could be
We have
mistaken.
2 that live in town, so.
Yeah, I feel.
Oh, you mean they may
Yeah.
just happen to be there?
My understanding with this coverage of the state police is that they're the area in which the available law enforcement officers, the number of law enforcement officers in the areas in which they are required to serve is not adequate. That was the last time we checked in with that. Don't know that that's changed. But yes, we do have folks that live here, so we'll see which, that in and of itself is kind of helpful. You see the car and people slow down. So,
One last thing, I'd
Yeah.
like to ask David, when he does contact the DOT for a traffic, for Kern's first ask.
the sheriff's office, you mean?
Yeah, I'm sorry, sheriff's office, yeah. If he'd be willing to ask if the sheriff would be willing to come here and give us a presentation on what options are available.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and didn't we have a traffic calming discussion a few months back with the state? I mean, like, we've got that sign on 173 coming into the center, the thing that tells you how fast you're going. Do we know if there's any data saying that, people are going slower? Do they keep track on that of?
When we bring that trailer back here,
Mhm.
we'll be able to download all
Oh,
sorts of
okay.
data from it. We haven't done it since we moved it out there, but It's about to depart its location because we're gonna set it up by the school before school starts on
So
Tuesday of next
David,
week.
what does happen to that data? Is that sent to the DOT, or do we have access to it?
Oh, we have access to it, and then we can do with it what we choose.
Okay. And is there-
Typically, we just download it and print it off, and then when people, you know,
Okay, so it's a report that we can see.
oh, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Good enough, thanks.
That's good. Well,
Okay, thank you. Thanks for bringing this to the board. And-
So it's okay, you want me to do those two things and
Yes,
get
Yes,
them
please.
please.
Yeah.
Okay, just checking.
Yes,
Make sure
please,
there was
thank you.
Unanimity or close.
Yes. And before proceeding with agenda item number 14, I first need a motion, please.
I move we suspend our meeting as a select board and that we convene as the Board of Assessors.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you very much. And David, would you care to give a brief, if you're possible able to, the work before us here as Board of
Sure,
Assessors?
before I start, just on the first page on 14,
Mhm.
that blank that's in the upper corner,
Mhm.
when you actually get to sign it later, assuming you're going to approve it, it will say 400, because that's how many pages there are. Bert just calculated that and sent me a text.
Excellent.
So annually, the Board of Assessors, or in your capacity as the Board of Assessors, you get to do everybody's favorite thing and set tax rate. The decisions are primarily already made for you by the voters or by the decision makers when it comes to the county tax, how that gets set. The thing is, although it's 3 pages, the first page pretty much breaks it down where the monies are assessed to us and what we can deduct for revenues. From that, we're looking this year to commit to the property tax collector, who's me, $8,416,055.52, which is, I don't have last year's numbers in front of me, but substantially more than last year. And the only real discretionary number available to the Board of Assessors at this point is the overlay, which I think I told you how much that could be. It's allowable by
80.
state law to be up to 5% of the commitment, so it could be 300 and 400,000. Where did I write that?
425?
Yeah,
427.
425, 547, 97. We've recommended that be 80,704.85. It's in line with what we've done the last 4 or 5 years. Actually, the last 20 years that I'm aware of. It's overlays available to the select board. The primary mechanism for rounding, so we don't have some tax rate that gives us half cents at people's tax bills, because that's always challenging. And for overlay, and the other thing it does is assist us in cash flow in terms of people that don't pay in time, and then at certain times of the year we're a little low on cash. So the assessed value of the town went up a little over $5 million this year over last year. I would anticipate with the implementation of the revaluation in the coming year that number will substantially change. We certified this year at 68% or 70%. The market still is doing what the market does in terms of real estate. We'll apply the rules fair and equitably and have new assessed values for next year. So I would anticipate the $450 million to be well in excess of that next year. So the mill rate will correspondingly drop, but that doesn't help us much for this year. Mill rate is just a mathematical calculation based on how much money the voters said we could assess them, and then divide it by the taxable valuation. I would like to note, it'll be on everybody's tax bill, that where each dollar of your taxes go. Just over 14 cents will go to run county operations, just over 14 cents will go to municipal operations, and the remaining 71 cents or 72 will go to education, either the pre-K to 8 Lincolnville Central School or the 5-town CSD for the high school. And I could ramble on and on and on, but I don't know if that's gonna make you, break you, and I'll try to answer some questions if you have them.
Well, and David, just for comparison purposes, wasn't it just a few years ago that we were up in the .018 range?
No, I don't think we've been around this level since probably back when we did the revalve last time, to be honest with you.
Oh, was that?
It's been a long time. I don't have that list with me.
You sent that list to me.
Did you
and
print that off by any chance?
I didn't print it, but I can look in
Oh,
my
I could
email.
look it up.
I was trying to remember, and but I know that we've been there, and then we did the reval and it dropped considerably.
Oh, yeah. I mean, every time you do a reevaluate, well, I mean, conceivably, if the real estate market tanked, your mill rate, if you're gonna raise the same amount of money, would go up.
Right, I know a lot of people are nervous about this reevaluation,
Yeah, what the
but,
revaluation does is it tries to take out the inequities in the system, so that if one group of properties was assessed extra low compared to everybody else, theirs are going to change at a greater percentage. You know, whatever the market, you know, it's all based on what the market sales have been doing for the last couple of years. And we all know that housing prices have changed substantially in the last couple of years. It doesn't look like there's much end in sight to that. I mean, I think it may have slowed some, but it's not going back to what it was in 2007, the last time we did the last reval.
but it's that number that you mentioned, that 68%, you know, that's what's driving that whole thing, is that we're too far away from.
Right, we're not,
Here.
there's two ratios, there's the sales ratio and then there's a quality ratio. And, you know, if everybody was assessed at 68% of market value, then everybody's evenly paying their fair share. But what happens over time is, through market forces, some properties become more desirable than others. And so there's inequities that are set up because people are buying the more, or paying more for what they perceive as the more desirable property. So you might have two exactly the same houses on exactly the same size lots, but one is in my neighborhood where nobody wants to live, and one is on the top of a mountain where everybody wants to live, and they pay more for that. So the value of the land changes, you know. So it's trying to get everybody back so you're assessed equally based on the property.
Yeah, thank you.
So I did finally find the PDF you
good.
sent, and the last time it was over 18%, or mill rate of more than 1.8, was 1989. It's actually 89, it was a long time ago. But, I mean, there is some volatility when you go back. 1979, it was 215 instead of 189 or whatever it is.
I mean,
You know,
it's, the rate is just math.
yeah.
And the voters
Voters made.
or the decision makers, because once again, we don't vote on the county tax, but those are approved, and you don't get a lot of discretion, you don't get any discretion except for overlay.
Yep. Any other questions for David? No. Would someone care to make a motion then?
I move the Board of Assessors approve and sign the Assessor's Certification of Assessment, the 2024 Municipal Tax Assessment Warrant, the Certificate of Commitment and Certificate of Assessment to be returned to Municipal Treasurer as prepared by the assessor's agent, establishing the tax rate for the fiscal year July 1, 2024 to June 30, 2025 at 0.0185 mils on the dollar, and the due dates of October 9th, 2024 and April 9th, 2025, with interest at 8.5% per annum to be paid on any unpaid portion commencing on October 10th, 2024 and April 10th, 2025, period.
So moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you very much. Well done, Steve. And before we...
The longest one.
And before moving on with the rest of our agenda, I need a final motion there, please.
I move that we adjourn our meeting as the Board of Assessors and reconvene as the Select Board.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you very much. And David, would you care to give an introduction to agenda item number 15?
Sure, I'll try to be more eloquent with something I don't really understand than I was when I wrote this down. But several weeks ago, we had fairly substantial computer service interruption here at the town office. As we discussed briefly, our previous IT person is no longer with us. Through a health issue, we contacted some other communities to find out who they use for computer things, assistance, that could help bail us out. We brought in Gusco Consulting, got us back up and running. It's kept us running pretty much. I asked the owner when he was here if he would put together a proposal for us for our consideration, and also take a look-see at what we were doing and if he had any short-term, long-term, what other recommendations. Everybody, you know, if you go to a mechanic, each one looks at your problem a little differently and has different solutions. But anyhow, so he's rattled off a few things, and before, I also had some conversations with some other vendors, not to the same level, just to find out who else is out there. Before I invest a lot of time and effort, I thought I'd bring this one forward to say they did us a solid once, they're recommended in the neighborhood. Do you want us to continue to look and invest some time, or would you want me to just say yep, or what your thoughts were? And if you want us to look forward, look for more, I would welcome anybody's assistance with this effort, because, as you know, I'm a techno dinosaur.
Thoughts? Yeah.
So just as a preface, I know Gus and Tatley pretty well. In 2018, I had a consulting practice, and Tilson approached me and asked me to come to work at Tilson, and I didn't want to abandon my customers, and so I looked around the community to determine who I would not sell but give those customers to. And Gus, so just so I want to make sure everybody's aware of any relationship stuff. After talking to Gus, I gave my client base to Gus. There was no money transferred or anything as such, because I found him to be of the limited number of resources that can help small businesses in our area. There's very few good IT folks in the region. Gus was the best opportunity to not screw up my customers, people I care about. So that's my opinion on that Gus, and he's done very well by the people I handed him a client base.
That's high praise.
So just, so if there's any, if I shouldn't vote on anything or whatever there, I'll do whatever people feels appropriate. Gus is, his company has done very solid by many towns in the region, and by many small businesses in the region. And I've read everything he's proposed in here. It is very cut and dry. He's not one to bait and switch or pull punches, or anything. He's a very cut and dry approach to how he goes about things. I have not talked to him directly during this time at all. I came in and talked to David when it was going on and heard what
After we'd already been in
yes,
touch
after
with
you'd already
this
got
guy.
it more or less fixed.
Mhm.
But I would have no hesitation in saying Gus is, especially because he works in other towns. He
Right,
works with towns that uses our same type of software,
Mm.
yep,
et cetera. And his recommendations, based on what I know of the town's IT, his recommendations that he provided are in line with what I would think of.
thank you. Questions?
Well, my only question, it sounds great to me, and looking at the email that he had sent with specific action items for improving what we've got, my question was how the service level relates to, I mean, I know it's kind of enumerated some of the services to be rendered. It sounds like the services to be rendered in the scope and manner of services covers the 6 items that are here, but I'm wondering about how much time, like, is that a 60-hour annual service agreement, or is it a 120? Do we pay separately for some of the direct changeover in the email that he enumerated?
Mm.
Because that's my question.
Mhm.
Because it looks like there's some initial,
Mhm.
one-time only stuff to
Mhm.
happen.
And that was a question I had as well, was
Yeah,
did
what's
he
the
give
service
you
level?
well, the service level to me is you buy X number of hours and I'll come do work for you for these and
Okay.
whatever you use up. But did he give to accomplish 1 through 6 in the email dated August 15th, did he say this will cost you this much?
He did not. The initial communication was a couple days earlier, on the 12th, about the invoice and moving forward. And I'd asked him, when he was here initially, delve into our system a little bit and give me your thoughts about things that you see. And so that's kind of what that list is. And I haven't pursued him since that 15th email at all, because I wanted to have this kind of conversation to just see where we all were. But certainly can. I mean, I don't think any of this stuff was highly critical. I mean, it's all important, and it's his thing, but I don't think it's gonna mean that because we've waited 2 weeks to have a conversation that the thing's not gonna work tomorrow morning.
How many hours a year would you approximate we typically?
I'd wanna go back and look. The bigger things for us have typically been when we set up a new workstation or replacement workstation because of whatever you computer people do, making it all communicate and move, migrating the stuff that somebody might have on their machine, making sure that the people understood what's different with this new thing versus with the old one. We didn't get a lot of crisis calls, I guess. It seems to run, well, the vast majority of our things just seem to be taken care of. The thing that whenever we did something new or different, I mean, we had Jim help us some with this live stream and projections and making that work. And he helped us with the Harbor Cam, which is still down, and I haven't even had a conversation at all with Gus about that, because we were talking about being able to utilize it for something that it wasn't initially thought to do, but I don't know if I could venture a guess without doing a little research about the hours involved. You know, Jim, you know, he tracked all our, you know, antivirus stuff and our I don't even know the right words to use, Steve, the certificates, and make sure we were compliant with whatever we needed to be compliant with.
He probably has some scope of what the average municipal needs are. I'm
Yeah.
guessing just sort of based on the proposal.
If we used 8 hours a month, I'd be surprised.
I mean, it's,
It
There's
comes
two
in
different-
fits and spurts.
well, and there's two different approaches to IT. There's break fix and there's proactive.
Yep.
And the break fix approach, I think, is more where Jim probably operated in.
Mhm.
And most companies, including Desco nowadays, are really trying to be more the proactive, like, let me actually touch your network and look at things a couple hours a month, and, oh, you were running out of hard disk space and the whole system's gonna come down.
Let's do something
Which is what I
before.
understood kinda happened.
Yep.
Might have been avoided.
Yep.
And so, to me, there's almost two things here. Item one is, we should have a relationship with somebody that is looking after the town's IT. I'm not sure if 60 or 120 is more appropriate, but some number. And then second is, in line with his recommendations, where could we fit these in over the course of the next couple of years, and what do these individual things potentially cost, so we can plan appropriately?
So, does the board wish to entertain other proposals, or do we feel comfortable moving forward with this one?
I feel comfortable moving forward with this, particularly after what Steve mentioned.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
I do as well, yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah, I agree. David, do you feel like you need expertise in helping finalize the details? Say, I don't know, someone who does this professionally.
If someone who does this professionally wanted to consult with me on the side to figure out which boxes to check, I'd welcome that, and then we'll get it done, and it'll be done.
More than happy to, sounds good.
Would you be willing?
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay,
Great.
do you need anything else from us, David?
Nope,
On
as long
that?
as you know I'm gonna just pull the trigger when we get to the
Yeah.
comfort level. Yep.
I
Good with that, yeah.
feel confident in the approach we just talked about, absolutely. And David, would you care to give an introduction on agenda item number 16?
Sure. As you recall, similar to the conversation we were having about the Slab City Road, town received a grant for the crossing of Youngtown Road over Hardy Brook. The town solicited engineering proposals for design and permitting. We received 3 back, which are in your packet. Using a qualifications-based selection procedure, both Matt and I reviewed the proposals, came up with the same 1, 2, 3 order, and number 1's in your packet, which was Gartley and Dorsey from Camden. They're the ones that helped us with the other Slab City Road project, I don't know, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it was, and the Townhouse Road one. Don't see any reason why they can't do this one too. So,
To that end, would someone care to make